It was supposed to be a quiet afternoon drive. Sergeant Major Elijah Brooks had just flown home the night before after a months-long deployment. He wore a simple hoodie over his army t-shirt, faded jeans, and a ball cap that barely revealed the close-cropped hair beneath. His pickup truck rumbled steadily along a rural stretch of highway in Georgia. Home soil, finally. The silence of the drive was broken by flashing blue and red lights in the rearview mirror. Elijah sighed and pulled over, his hands already on the wheel, fingers splayed in clear view. He'd been through this before, too many times. He'd learned how to move slow, to smile without showing too much teeth, to shrink his voice just enough to keep things calm. The officer approached quickly. White, maybe in his early 30s, rigid posture, mirrored sunglasses. His hand hovered near his holster. "You know why I pulled you over?" the officer asked, not waiting for an answer before adding, "License and registration." "Yes, sir. Glove box, if that's all right." The officer nodded stiffly. Elijah moved slowly, carefully. He handed over his ID and papers. The officer stared at the name, then looked back at him. "You military?" the officer asked suddenly. "Yes, sir. Just got back last night." The officer narrowed his eyes. "You got any proof of that? You wearing that army hoodie doesn't mean much. People fake that stuff all the time." Elijah blinked, surprised. "My ID's right there. Says U.S. Army. Active duty." The officer didn't even glance down. "Yeah, I've seen fakes. Got a whole bunch of you pretending to be heroes. Real soldiers don't drive old pickups with expired tags." The words hit like a slap. Elijah clenched his jaw but didn't respond. "Not yet." "Step out of the vehicle," the officer ordered. "What for?" "Step. Out." Now Elijah exhaled slowly and opened the door. He stood tall, 6 feet 2 inches, broad-shouldered, calm, but unshaken. The officer seemed momentarily thrown by his quiet confidence, but barked again, "Hands where I can see them." "I'm not armed," Elijah said calmly. "You're making a mistake." "Let me be the judge of that," the officer snapped. "You're going to tell me you're active duty? Where's your proof? Where's your medals, huh?" Elijah paused, and then, without a word, he walked to the back of his truck, unlocked a side compartment, and carefully pulled out a small wooden box, worn from time, but polished with care. He opened it, turned it toward the officer, and waited. Inside, nestled in black velvet, lay a shining Medal of Honor. The officer froze. His face changed, confusion, disbelief, and a growing flush of shame. He stared at the medal like it was burning a hole through his authority. Elijah didn't speak. He didn't need to. The truth sat in that box, shining brighter than any badge. The officer's mouth parted slightly as if words were forming, but none came. The Medal of Honor gleamed in the afternoon light, its blue ribbon catching the breeze, its weight more than just metal. It was the kind of medal few ever saw up close, fewer still ever earned. And the man holding it, calm, composed, silent, was among the rarest of them all. Elijah didn't gloat. He didn't step forward or demand an apology. He just held the box at chest height, still and centered, eyes fixed on the officer, unwavering. For a long moment, the only sounds were the soft rustling of trees and the low hum of passing cars in the distance. The officer finally stammered. "I didn't know." "No," Elijah said quietly. "You didn't ask." The words cut deeper than shouting ever could. The officer blinked, his bravado melting away, leaving only a thin layer of shame. He looked again at the ID he'd been holding, as if suddenly seeing it for what it was. Not just a name on plastic, but a legacy carried in silence. I'm sorry, sir," the officer said, taking an involuntary step back. But Elijah didn't respond to that. Instead, he gently closed the box, sliding it back into its compartment, locking it without hurry. When he turned again, he said calmly, "It's always the same. Uniform or not. I step out of a truck looking like this, and I'm a problem until proven otherwise." The officer looked like he wanted to disappear into the gravel. "I shouldn't have assumed," he mumbled. Elijah nodded once. "But you did." It wasn't a lecture. It was a mirror. And the officer had no defense. I'll take care of the tags," he offered quickly. "That's minor. You're good to go." Elijah walked back to the driver's side, climbed in, and shut the door. His hands returned to the wheel, steady. As he pulled back onto the road, the officer remained frozen on the shoulder, not from fear, but from the unmistakable weight of a truth he hadn't been ready to confront. Elijah didn't look in the rearview mirror. He had nothing to prove. He'd proven it long before today. The tires hummed steadily beneath Elijah's truck as he drove down the two-lane road, trees blurring past like green ghosts. But his mind wasn't on the road anymore. It was behind him, still standing on the gravel shoulder next to that officer, still unpacking what had just happened. It wasn't new. Not really. It had happened in airports, in gas stations, in grocery stores. A glance, a doubt, a tone of voice that curled with suspicion before a word was even exchanged. This was just the first time it had happened with a badge and a gun, and still, he hadn't flinched. Because when you've stared death in the face and kept walking, when you've carried brothers off battlefields, when you've been the only voice left on a radio while enemy fire tore through silence, you learn what to fear and what not to. He drove until the road opened up into a small town, the kind where flags waved on light posts, and the diner always smelled like coffee and bacon. A few kids played basketball near the school, their laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air. This was the town he'd grown up in, left, fought for, come back to, and yet, even here, especially here, he was still a stranger in moments like that. He parked near the hardware store and stepped out. A couple of older men sitting on a bench glanced up. One of them gave a slow, respectful nod. "Elijah Brooks," the man said. "Heard you were back." Elijah nodded. "Just got in a few days ago." "Good to have you home," the man added, tipping his hat. It was a small thing, but it carried weight. Inside the store, the owner greeted him with a handshake and a familiar grin. "Heard you're the reason we're still flying that flag out front." Elijah chuckled softly. "I'm just one reason." He bought what he needed, a few tools, some paint, and headed back to his truck. But as he loaded the bags in, a voice called from behind. "You're that guy from the highway, aren't you?" Elijah turned. A teenager, maybe 17, lanky, wearing a hoodie too big for him, stood a few feet away, phone in hand, eyes wide. "I saw the video," the teen said. "Someone posted it. You showed that cop the medal and just stood there." Like a boss, Elijah sighed inwardly. So it had already made its way online. The teen stepped closer, almost reverent now. "My brother's in the Army. He's in basic. I didn't even know someone like you could get that kind of medal." Elijah met his gaze, steady and calm. "What kind of someone is that?" The teen flushed. I just meant." Elijah held up a hand, not angry, just real. "I know what you meant. That's why it matters." He reached into the truck, pulled out a folded Army brochure from his glove compartment, and handed it to the kid. "Tell your brother to stay strong," he said. "And tell him, it's not the uniform that earns respect. It's the choices you make in it." The teen nodded, eyes shining now. "Yes, sir." Elijah watched him walk off, then looked down the street. Yeah, maybe the world was watching now. And maybe that wasn't such a bad thing. Elijah was on his porch, sipping black coffee from an old ceramic mug that had survived deployments, barracks, and more moves than he could count. He watched the dew burn off the grass as the small town woke up around him. Early joggers, dogs barking in the distance, a delivery truck rumbling by. Then, a sleek black SUV pulled up to the curb. Two men in uniform stepped out. Not police, military. One was a lieutenant colonel. The other wore civilian clothes, but had the unmistakable bearing of someone who had worn stars on his shoulders once upon a time. Elijah stood as they approached. "Sergeant Major Brooks?" the colonel asked. "Retired now," Elijah replied, shaking his hand. The man in civilian clothes smiled. "Still carries more weight than most active ranks. May we sit?" Elijah motioned toward the porch chairs. They all sat. No one rushed to speak. "We saw the video," the colonel finally said. Elijah chuckled dryly. "Of course you did. It's gone viral," the other man added. "The confrontation. The medal. You're calm. It's everywhere." I didn't ask for that, Elijah replied, voice steady. Didn't even know someone was recording. The older man nodded. That's often how the moments that matter are captured. When we're just being who we are. They paused. Then the colonel leaned forward. We wanted to ask if you'd be willing to speak. Not in a flashy way, but directly. To recruits, to officers. About what leadership really looks like. What honor looks like. Elijah stared at them for a moment. I'm not a motivational speaker, he said. I'm not a symbol. You're not, the colonel agreed. You're better. You're real. And people are listening now, Elijah considered that. His gaze drifted toward the horizon. So many years in uniform, in places where life and death blurred together. So many moments that no one had seen. But now, this one moment, simple, unjust, but handled with calm, had become his most public act of service. And maybe, just maybe, it was the most important. I'll think about it, he said. They both nodded. As they rose to leave, the older man turned once more. You showed restraint when others would have shown rage. You showed dignity when it wasn't given to you. That's leadership, Sergeant Major. That's why we need you now. Maybe more than ever. Then they left. Elijah sat back down, his coffee cold now, but his mind awake. He had fought for a country that sometimes refused to see him, but he never fought for its approval. He fought for its future, and the future might just be knocking again. The following week, Elijah stood in front of a packed auditorium at Fort Benning. Rows of fresh recruits sat upright in their seats, some barely out of high school, others older, but carrying the same nervous energy. Drill sergeants lined the back walls, arms crossed. Officers filled the front row, their faces unreadable but focused. Elijah hadn't worn his dress uniform. He didn't want the medal on his chest to do the talking. He wore a simple olive green jacket over his army t-shirt and jeans. His presence carried more than enough weight. A podium had been set up. Microphones, cameras. Someone had clearly turned the moment into something official. Elijah didn't care for the fanfare, but he understood the opportunity. Someone was finally ready to listen. He stepped up, adjusted the mic, looked out over the sea of faces. I'm not here to give you a speech, he began, and I'm not here to tell you how to earn a medal. The room quieted even more. You could hear every breath. I'm here to talk about the moments no one prepares you for. The ones off the battlefield. The ones where the uniform doesn't protect you. Where the color of your skin walks into the room before your rank does. Murmurs rippled. Not disapproval. Realization. Last week I was pulled over. Accused of impersonating a soldier. Told I looked fake. That I didn't belong. I've served this country for over 20 years. But to that officer, I was just another black man in a truck. He paused. Let it land. But I didn't raise my voice. Didn't reach for my badge. I showed him the truth. The same truth I've carried through every tour, every loss, every salute. He glanced down, then back up. I showed him my Medal of Honor. Gasps, even from the back of the room. And he backed off, he apologized. Said he didn't know. Elijah leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with the recruits. My message to you is this. If you have to wear a medal just to be seen as equal, the system's broken. But you still have to walk through it. Not with hate, with purpose. A stillness settled in the room. A kind of reverence. Being a soldier isn't just about what you do in combat. It's about how you carry yourself when no one is watching, when no one believes you, when they test your patience, your dignity, your humanity. He let the silence stretch. Earn your uniform, but never forget who you are beneath it. He stepped back from the mic. No applause, just silence. And then slowly, like thunder rolling in reverse, the entire room rose to their feet. Drill sergeants, officers, recruits, all of them standing, not in obligation but in recognition of a man who had never needed to raise his voice to command the room. The standing ovation faded slowly, respectfully. Elijah gave a small nod and stepped down from the stage, his boots echoing softly against the polished floor of the auditorium. He didn't linger. He didn't need the spotlight. Backstage, a young black recruit waited for him. Barely 18, nervous, hands clenched into fists at his sides. His uniform was crisp, too new, his name barely stitched above the pocket. "Sergeant Major Brooks, sir," the recruit said, his voice shaking slightly. Elijah stopped, offering the young man a calm look. I wanted to say thank you," the recruit said. "I've been thinking about quitting. It's been rough. The looks, the pressure, feeling like I gotta work twice as hard, just to be taken half as seriously." Elijah stepped closer. "What's your name, soldier?" "Private First Class Devin Carter." "You from around here?" "Mississippi, sir. Small town. My dad was Army, too. Said it would make a man out of me." Elijah gave a short nod. "Your father wasn't wrong. But it's not the Army that makes you a man. It's how you carry yourself when it gets hard." Devin looked up, eyes wide. "How do you keep going?" "After everything?" Elijah's voice was quiet but firm. "Because quitting never gave anyone a legacy. And because someone like you is watching someone like me. And if I quit, you might think it's okay to quit too." The young soldier blinked hard, emotion catching in his throat. "I won't forget that, sir." Elijah placed a hand on the young man's shoulder. "Good. Because one day, someone will look at you the same way. Make sure you're the man worth looking up to." They stood in silence for a beat before Elijah turned to leave. As he stepped out of the auditorium into the open air, a breeze caught the edge of his jacket. He looked up at the flag flying high above the base, not with naive patriotism, but with clear-eyed purpose. He didn't serve for the glory. He didn't endure for the fame. He endured because change never comes easy, and it never comes if men like him step aside. 2 weeks had passed. The video had made its rounds on every major news outlet. Social media was still buzzing. Hashtags, think pieces, late-night commentary. Some used Elijah's story as a lesson in restraint, others as a mirror of what was still broken in America. But Elijah? He stayed grounded. He'd returned to his quiet home, to his community, the people who knew him not as a headline, but as a mentor, a neighbor, a man who helped rebuild fences after storms and volunteered at the local VFW hall without fanfare. It was there, at that very hall, that he stood now, not in uniform, not as a soldier, but as a speaker, a guide. The room was filled with veterans, black, white, Latino, old men in faded hats, women who'd served in silence for decades. A few younger vets sat toward the back, tattoos peeking out from beneath sleeves, eyes carrying stories they hadn't yet spoken. The topic of the day wasn't the Medal of Honor. It was dignity. It was identity. It was what it meant to come home and still have to fight. Not with rifles, but with presence. As Elijah spoke, he didn't preach. He told the truth. He spoke about the silent battles, the ones fought in department stores, traffic stops, airport terminals, the times a salute was answered with suspicion, the moments you're asked to prove something you've already earned. He ended with this: "There's a weight we carry, those of us who serve, and those of us who are black and serve. And sometimes that weight isn't just the uniform, it's the gaze that comes with it. But we carry it anyway, not for approval, not for applause, but because we know the ground we walk on costs something. And if we walk it with grace, someone else won't have to walk it in fear." The room was still. No phones, no noise. Just men and women sitting with what he said. Later, as people lined up to shake his hand, Elijah saw a familiar face at the edge of the crowd. The officer, from the highway. No sunglasses this time, no holster, just a man. He stepped forward slowly, nervous, quiet. "Sergeant Major," he said, "I came to thank you. Not for the lesson. For the example." Elijah gave a nod. Nothing more. That was enough. Because some lessons don't need to be spoken twice. They just need to be seen once, with open eyes.